And this is only audio, right? Right, Eric?
That's it. That's it.
Wow, I dialed myself up for nothing. That's okay. My name's Eddie. I'm an alcoholic. Good looking alcoholic. Yeah. So yeah, I knew that there was a fella when I first got sober I live in the Woodside area, in New York City, in Queens. So there is in Woodside, there's a lot of bars, but there's a lot of meetings. And so I got drunk in Woodside and I finally got sober in Woodside, which I didn't think was possible when I first was coming around AA. So, I was driven to AA, like it says in the first step. Had no idea about that, and not many people do, right? When you come into AA, I just figure I drank too much, or, I try to imagine my life, what life would be like if I could stop drinking. And I did not know that I had passed that invisible line that they talk about. They talk about that in the 12 and 12. So I'm going to refer probably a lot to the 12 and 12, also the big book. So I wouldn't even know it if I passed it, right? So and I made lots of attempts to try to stop drinking. I'd say probably the last 3 years of my drinking, I knew there was a problem. The world seemed to know there was a problem. I was kind of like the last one, but I thought maybe I might be able to beat the game. Somehow, some way, I'm going to figure this thing out. And little did I know that, once that line is passed, which for most alcoholics, I guess I had passed it a lot sooner than I actually thought, right? Um, but I know in the beginning, alcohol did something for me that it didn't do for other people, right? And I used to hear that alcohol is a depressant, and like, what are they talking about? When I drink, now, of course, I was starting to get very depressed at the end of my drinking, which uh, which I didn't like too much. But at one time, alcohol seemed to energize me. So I used to see people. Oh, by the way, I don't see the clock. Maybe. Oh, I see Derek. I see it. Yep, 42 minutes. Okay, it's countdown. All right, thanks, man. All right, let's move the chain. Keep moving the chains, right? That's a good analogy. I like that football analogy for sobriety. So, because I got to cover a lot of ground. But I would say the last 3 years of my drinking were probably the worst years of my. But alcohol did for me what nothing else did in my life when I first started drinking, and it freed me from the bondage of self, right? And it allowed me to be me, for Christ's sake, because it's not easy being a teenager anyway. But I just I love that effect. And I think as alcoholics, when I think about it, um, it spoils us in a way because there's nothing that can come close to it, right? Um, so then I get sober and I'm trying to do all these different things, and nothing really eclipses that effect that I used to get from alcohol, right? And I'm trying to recapture those days. I was trying to do it at the end of my drinking. I do found that one thing actually does do that, and that's following the principles in AA and carrying this message to the next sick and suffering alcoholic. You can get that joy that we used to get from drinking. And if I don't, I feel, for me anyway, because I'll just throw out some numbers. I have not had a drink, and believe me, this is miraculous because I did not think I could stay sober for a day, a week, a month, right? 37 years. 37 years and change. Okay, let's just put it that way. Haven't found necessary to pick up a drink or any other mood altering drug. And something came into my life, that's for sure. There's just no way. Now I got a lot of help along the way. And I was very fortunate that when it was time to get sober, or when I got sober anyway, there were people. there were plenty meetings. You know, you'd be very hard pressed in this area not to find an AA meeting. You know, there used to be, and I got sober in the 80s. I got sober when there was phones on the wall, right? It's crazy, you know. Um, and that was the thing that in this particular area, there were sometimes two or three meetings going on at the same time. I mean, just people around here just get spoiled, you know. Um, but so I went to my first meeting, but I remember going to the first meeting saying I'm not, I somehow, you know what? Thanks for the information. I thought you guys were a cult. Thanks for the information, because they talk about that also in the powerlessness, right? Um, I try to control and enjoy my drinking, right? And somehow I just self-knowledge. Okay, they talk about that in There's a Solution, right? Somehow I thought I could still beat the game. Self-knowledge will fix this. And I'm a smart guy, right? So I remember the only person who employed me at the time was my father. Okay. And I viewed myself as unemployable by the time I came into AA. I couldn't hold anything. I lost a lot of jobs, burned a lot of bridges, a lot of nice relationships. You really distanced myself from my family. And I was pretty much broke. I mean, my scorecards were reading zero when I came into here. And I remember the fellow who did 12 step me, my friend John. And he lived on my block, and I didn't see John for about 3 years. And I go, John, where have you been? And he goes, oh, well, I just got out of prison. I did a bank robbery. I went, oh, wow, that's amazing. And he talked about if when I was ready to go to an AA meeting with him, and I said, okay, I'll go. And yeah, I admitted it. And but like I said, I just had this fear of. I had this fear of what do you call it? Jim Jones, different things like that. I think that was around the 80s, Drink the Jesus Juice. Anybody remember that? Uh, so I like you people, you mean well, but yeah, thanks. And then it wasn't soon before I realized like they talk about in the big book, right? Um, we are without defense against that first drink, right? So I'm counting the days. It's like 5, 6, 7 days. I'm like, yeah, I want a trophy, right? Because this is the first time since I was like maybe 12 or 13 that I can remember where I stayed sober for a week. And I wanted a medal. I mean, that's amazing. But now, mind you, the obsession I guess like Willie Nelson, it was always on my mind, right? And then this electrician, because my father, he came from Ireland. He had his own construction company, so I was with him. I was just working as a laborer by this point. And I must have been talking to these electricians. So I remember we were in Brooklyn, and this electrician comes up and he goes, oh, you're not drinking, huh? Hey, you want to? And then it was a Friday afternoon. It was a hot day. Hey, you want to drink? And I remember these guys had tall boys, right? And I heard the psh like that. And I was like, oh, no, no. And next thing you know, it was like, oh, hell yeah. I remember getting that ease and comfort that came with that drink. And I made a beeline right to Classics Bar. And it's like when you went in there, um, half the bar was like, like Irish American. The other half were like Spanish dealers, right? So it was like a perfect mix. And I knew I kind of knew in a way like this was going to be the end of the end, like I just knew, okay, I'm going for the ride, and wherever it's going to go, it's going to take me. And after 5 days, busted and disgusted. And I remember even looking at my pockets going, what the fuck is that? Yeah, it was like I had half grams of cocaine started. And I don't know who was hanging out when I was like, yeah, go ahead, do a few lines, whatever. Um, and just, oh, I was just, and then I got scared because I was like, wait a second, I was trying to really, really beat this thing. I was trying to not drink. And I realized that I could not stop. And I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good at all. And I started going back to meetings. And then after about 2.5 years, and trust me, if you want to read like how it doesn't work, I'm that guy. I'm the guy. I didn't. I'm a minimum dosage guy, and so the nice thing is, I kind of came to this table late. You know, I exhausted all of the possibilities. So if I could find a way to do this, a shortcut, I would do it, But unfortunately, it doesn't work when it comes to alcoholism. Um, and I remember I had a sponsor, and he would say, "I'll buy you the first drink," I was like, "Hey, where's the love? I thought you were supposed to convince me, like, like to drink, right?" And then I said, "I feel like jumping off a bridge." And he goes, "What bridge do you want to go to? I'll drive you there." It's like, whoa. And then the last thing I tried was AA. And I finally, after 2 years, and I don't recommend this for people. Hey, listen, if you want to sponsor yourself, great, but I do not suggest it. It's good because I have a very myopic view of life, and I need an objective view. And today I called my sponsor the other day twice, whatever. I just need someone to bounce off sometimes. So anyway, I tried AA and I finally got a home group, and that was one of the big shifts for me. Actually, taking a commitment. These guys actually gave me the keys, and I was going to make coffee. And I made sure, damn sure, that I was going to be there 1 hour before any of these guys start complaining. Because if they do, I am out of here, right? So I made sure that light was on 1 hour before, and an amazing thing happened. Because generally up to that point, I was either filled with resentment or self-pity. I was feeling sorry for myself for whatever, or worrying about the week. That was my modus operandi. And so I started doing that, and I started to feel better. And then I started to realize, wow, this is the result of taking action, you know. So I started to act my way into good thinking. I said, okay, that's cool. And I didn't necessarily believe everything you people said. I couldn't deny what I was seeing though. And I saw people, I couldn't connect them with their stories. I'd listen to the story and I talk to the person. I go, wow, yeah, there was. So I definitely knew something was happening. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I do what these people do, maybe I'll get what they want. Now, just a real quick story. There was this meeting called over in East Elmhurst. It was called the Last Gaspers. How's that for a name for an AA meeting, right? And most of the guys were like they were, retired. I was young. I came into AA when I was about 25. And so I remember this one guy, Dennis Sullivan. I'll never forget it. This guy, he had this contagious laugh where like he would tell a joke and then he would start laughing at himself. Like he sounded like Burgess Meredith, right? So I went to Dennis and I said, "Hey, Dennis, uh, what gives? You're happy, you're laughing." He's having fun. And it's like, well, what's the story here? Everybody else, it looks like a morgue in here. And he goes, "Oh, I go to these step meetings." I go, "Really?" So at the time, back in the 80s and 90s in New York anyway, there weren't too many big book meetings, okay? Which I never understood, by the way. I was like, once I started reading this, I was like, why aren't these people talking about this thing? This is my book. Anyway, I always gravitated toward the big book, but and they had a big book meeting there too. But he would say, "Yeah, go to these step meetings." They were 12 and 12. So I started doing that, you know? So now at least, okay, at least I'm going to solution-based meetings. I'm reading the literature. I'm prognosticating about the steps. I'm not actually doing the steps, but I got the lingo. I'm talking it, right? Talking some shares, sounds good, right? And but eventually I did go through the process. And it's interesting. The 12th step is amazing. Somebody asked me to sponsor them one time. And I said, all right, great. Now, at the time, I never felt like I did a thorough fourth step. And the crazy thing was, my ego prevented me from saying, hey, I don't know if I can really sponsor you, but I said, no, I'll sponsor you, right? Thank God I did. So, because my ego didn't want me to say I didn't know. And I learned how to do a fourth and fifth step by bringing somebody else through the process. Isn't that crazy? So, you learn by teaching, So, and one of the big lies in AA, or at least I was guilty of it myself, so I won't condemn everybody, is, I have nothing to offer you. That's BS. Because if you're like, I tell people if you're a week sober, you can help somebody with 24 hours. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can share your experience where you're at, and that's that, As long as you're like a week ahead. So my attitude toward that changed a lot too. But and then what I was gonna say was eventually like I say, going through that fourth and fifth step with him helped me a lot. And I will share one of the things I wanted to really, I feel one of the biggest things in my sobriety anyway, and probably the reason why I'm probably still here today. I'll just refer to it. Is the what do you call it? The not the fourth step prayer, the fifth step promises, okay? And when I finally went through the inventory, through the big book, listing the resentments, the fears, and everything, because I did that life story thing, you know. And if you haven't done it via the big book, I strongly suggest it because you want to get this experience. So and they talk about on page 75, okay? We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease, right? Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Okay. So that's when I really, really, really came to believe that, oh, this is the God they're talking about. See, because before that, it was kind of like, it's out there and yeah, I'm a believer. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was all talk, you know? Um, but now, and that's the beautiful thing about this thing. And there's promises all throughout this thing, right? Um, and I think that's what I strive for anyway. One of the beautiful things about when you do work with people and you bring other people through the steps, it reinforces it in you, number one. So, and I love to have a first step experience. When I do a 12 step, I'm getting in touch with my own alcoholism, right? Because I'm sharing about my drinking, right? Helping another drunk. And that's how we connect with it. I can't bring to mind, the debacle of a week or a month before. Like I can't like keep it green in my head. It's not gonna work. I gotta act, I gotta continue to take action on a regular basis. So that was great. And so that was huge. And like I said, I started to have that experience and I started to get the experience that, you know what, I think everything's gonna be okay. You know what? Yeah. And that obsession to drink was lifted. I was again, I was with the obsession for at least a couple of years. I think Dr. Bob maybe four. Whoa, maybe he had reservations. Dr. Bob, let's talk. No, but whew, but one of the hardest steps, and this might sound crazy, is step one, is the first step. You know, there's a lot of layers to it. And like I said, I hopefully continue to smash that thing. But it is a whole lot more than just not drinking, I found out, you know. It seems like my alcoholism, I stopped drinking, my alcoholism. You know what untreated alcoholism looks a lot like? My sponsor tells me this. It looks like mental illness. That's what it looks like. It really does. And if a psychiatrist looks at you, they go, I don't know what's wrong with this guy, but and a lot of times, it takes another drunk to see it and say, hey, this looks a lot like untreated alcoholism. And just I'll refer back to, and it's very painful. On page 52, they talk about the bedevilments. There you go. And when I turn, and probably people do this too, I'm sure in this meeting, where when they say we, I turn that to an I, right? So like anytime we had to ask ourselves why, so I'll turn it to like I had to ask myself, Eddie had to ask himself why Eddie shouldn't apply to human problems the same willingness to change my point of view. I was having trouble with personal relationships. I couldn't control my emotional nature. I was a prey to misery and depression, and I couldn't make a living. Had a feeling of uselessness. I was full of fear. I was unhappy, and I couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution to these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. So, so that's phenomenal. So yeah, and so I'd say that was probably that amongst other things has probably kept me here today. I would say the other thing, if I had like that's probably like the top five, because I wanted to start, like I was giving a little thought today. Um, and probably I do attend a lot of meetings. I love going to meetings whenever possible. Um, and bringing people through the work. I love doing that too. That's great. Page four. Oh, bingo. Look at this. Mr. Thumper I am. Page 14. They do mention when Bill was hopeless in the hospital, when Ebby visited him, right? Bottom of 14. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all our affairs. Particularly, it was an imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through what? Now, I think it's like going on retreats. Go up to Graymore. I've been up to Graymore. It's beautiful up there. I love that place, right? Go visit the monks, maybe, could be. I'm not denigrating these things, but they say through work and self-sacrifice for others. That's not my go-to, right? But that's how we do it. For others, I could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. So they tell me there's going to be certain low spots ahead. Why is it going to be different for me? That's called life, right? But by doing these things, and a lot of times it's uh, and sometimes it's inconvenient. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about inconvenience for an out, and I'm talking as a self-centered alcoholic. There is a lot of coinage in that. There's a big payoff for inconveniencing yourself to help another alcoholic. And you'll have to take my word for it until you do it. Or maybe you do. But if you stay up all night with somebody at a trying to get them into a detox, you're going to be flying the next day, and you don't even need to sleep at that point. Not saying to stay up till for two, get 2 hours sleep and go to work, but I have found that to be the case. But anyway, I'm not saying it's just a virtue signaling, but yeah, the joy of living. So that I just wanted to highlight that fifth step, and then uh, of course, making restitution for harms done. I remember one amends I had to pay back, which I didn't want to do it at the time. Pay back student loans, and I spent a lot of time agonizing about that. And then the problem with that is you go into default and all this stuff. I had bad credit when I came in here. My credit's great now, by the way, which is an amazing turnaround. I just want to share some of the positive stuff. The other thing just real quick, a lot of times I don't mention it at the end of my share, but I've been with the same company for like 33 years. I mean, how does this happen? It's because, well, number one, I'm sober, but yeah, it's just learning to show up a lot of times, whether I feel like it or not. Wow, I can't go by my feelings. Um, so yeah, so Page, what do you call it? Also, yeah, so making amends. The nice thing is today, I don't believe. Yeah, I don't believe I owe anybody amends consciously at this point. Once in a while, things do pop up where I go, "Oh, yeah, maybe, whatever." That may come up from time to time, but for the most part, consciously, I can't, you know, um, I don't have to duck anybody, which is an amazing thing. Also, one of my favorite and to stay here, like I have to continue to grow. So they talk about that in steps 10, 11, and 12, right? And what I wanted to mention with that, yeah, on page 84, yeah, we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So we entered the world of the spirit, and our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And this is not an overnight matter; it should continue for a lifetime. So they're asking me to continue to what? Watch for selfishness, dishonesty, right? Resentment and fear. And now they're not telling me what if it'll crop up when it does, right? So all I got to do is just be awake to that. When it crops up, God, please remove this, and I make amends quickly if I harmed anybody. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned, right? So we'll seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil. We recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally. We will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So that's been my experience also. And somebody, just gonna say because I got into acting and stuff, but somebody, a very famous person, was asking one time. 'Cause I was going down to Asbury Park when I could write a play about that. But and he said to me, he goes, he goes, Eddie, what do you do? I go, what do you mean? What do I do? What are you talking about? Oh, I saw you in the dance floor, blah 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 blah. I go, yeah, I don't do anything. I just you know, just high on life, you know? Nah, get out of here. Like some people, they're shocked. They don't realize that you can actually enjoy life without drinking or putting anything into your body, which to me is the greatest compliment in the world, you know? Takes a lot of work, you know? Um, but if I have a reason to be there, right? Which a lot of times that's the case. A lot of times you'll see people even at like after I go to an acting class I go in the West Village at HB Studio. Everybody like from the world goes there, which is amazing. I lived in New York my whole life, and I just realized in the last 10 years that I'm like, this is amazing. People actually travel from all over the world just to come here, you know? And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I'm living in Queens. What the, like, wake up. But setting that all aside, but a lot of times, like if somebody has, they do a play or something like that, they might have a gathering in a pub. That's just, I mean, that's just life, the bars aren't going to go out of business because I decided to get sober. Although I know I probably put a lot of bartenders' kids through college, I'll say another thing about getting sober. It is good financially. I mean, for me, it was. I know some people have other financial setbacks and stuff, but I think it's certainly a great way to go. And they talk about it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action. Oh boy, is it. Oh boy. For me, man, I tell you, sometimes I want to just kick back and enjoy the fruits of my labor, right? I'm headed for, and then here's the thing though, we're headed for trouble if we do. So they're giving us a warning, you know? Oh yeah, it's understandable, but you know what? They careful, right? And because what I really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition, right? So every day is a day I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities, which is kind of cool in a way. Um, because um, I just have a tendency. I know, like in a lot of things in life, you learn an instrument and you practice and you work at it and you work at it and you work at it, and then you get to it and you're like, yeah, I got this, all right. But then you stop, and sobriety is a lot like that too, right? You work it, you work in it. It's a muscle. And the minute you stop training, I'm sure like with athletes, same thing, right? Stop training, bam. I'm going backwards, man. I'm going back to the drink. So there's no hiatus like, oh, okay, I'm on a holiday. Okay, I drank on holidays. I drank when it was St. Patrick's Day. I drank when it was New. It didn't matter, right? Me, I remember I had a sponsor one time where we go, when did I drink? Well, let's see. I drank when it was sunny. I drank when it was cold. I drank when it was warm. I drank because my eyes were open. I don't need any more. I don't need any more reason to drink than that. I'm an alcoholic. I have the mind of an alcoholic. Wherever I go, there I am. So, and they talk about much has been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all power and knowledge, right? If I have carefully followed directions, I've begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious, and we have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. And then they suggest, of course, um, what do you call it? Prayer and meditation. Now, what's interesting, yeah, generally in the morning, uh, like there's different times of the day, and oh, before I get to that, yeah, with the step 11, when we retire at night, and I was probably not till about 10 years ago or even 15 years ago. It was like, oh, wait a second, retire at night? You mean my day begins at the night before? Yeah, yeah. By looking at my day. Um, they talk about like the first part is actually when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Where was I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Okay. Do I owe an apology? There's about 11 questions there. Like what I did was I actually wrote them, I put them on my refrigerator. Have I kept something to myself which should be discussed with another person? Was I kind and loving towards all? Now, do I do this every day? Um, no, no, I'm gonna wrap myself out. I need to get back into this practice. I've been slacking. So this big thumper is slacking. The truth came out. I ratted myself out. Isn't that good? But I feel good doing that. I don't know why. But but that's true. I need to be a little more Yeah, yeah, a little more thorough with this. But, was I kind and loving towards all? What could I have done better? This is great, you know. Was I thinking of what I could do for others or what I could pack into the stream of life? But I must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. That would diminish my usefulness to others. That's what this is all about. Me being useful to myself, to others, to God. And after making review, I ask God for forgiveness and inquire what corrective matters. And upon awakening, um, let us consider about the 24 hours for the day. So that's the second part, right? Before my feet even hit the ground, I consider my plans for the day. Generally, I write, this is just for me. And I'm not telling you guys that everybody's got their own. This is just what works for me. The Where's my man with the clock? I see you, buddy. 9:16. Okay. We're doing good though, right? Yeah, we're forging ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're going for the end zone. So anyway, yeah, and the second part for me, upon awakening, think about the consider my plans today. Before I begin, I ask God to direct my thinking. Wow, that's huge. I cheat. There is this app. I won't even mention the app, but they do have prayers, AA prayers and stuff. But I won't even. You know what? I won't even go there. I just want to give a quick mention also. Which helped me in my sobriety, the Joe and Charlie. This is going to go under the asterisk. I see some heads bob, and I know there was a time in AA, and my sponsor Richie, I had him for 20 years, God bless him. And he used to say the most profound stuff. I'm telling you. And he actually got sobered down in the village. He used to hang out with actors and writers. I go, who is this guy? And he was in Queens, but I go, he's not like any of these other people in Queens, you know? And it was because I know because he was hanging out with them, and he used to be able to just break down everything into and sizzle really really simple. But he would say, "What I do today will keep me sober today." I couldn't think of a simpler way or another way to break it down any more than that. But what I do today will keep me sober today. I can't argue with that, you know? And it's not tomorrow. If I'm going to drink, it's going to be today, right? So just all I got to focus on, what can I do today for my sobriety? What am I willing to do for my sobriety? I like that. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, but also the Joe and Charlie tapes, just a little asterisk because they really give a great description about the allergy because that used to baffle me. Like, what do they talk about allergy? But basically, it's an abnormal reaction, and basically, my reaction to alcohol is just it's just different from other people, normal people. I heard something to the extent where, like there's a glass that's the one where the glass is half empty, half full. So the optimist looks at it, he goes, it's half full. And then the pessimist looks at it, he goes, it's half empty. And the alcoholic says, "Are you going to drink that or what?" So it's like three types of people. And it used to annoy me when I used to see people drink, but that's normal drinkers, right? But I'm not, no, I'm just not a normal drinker. It's just that I don't have that off switch, right? That's okay. Um, and so they give those 11 questions, which is great, you know. And then upon awakening, I asked God to write my thinking. I asked that it be divorced from one, self-pity, dishonesty, and self-seeking motives. Wow, that eliminates my modus operandi, right? And what I used to think was depression, by the way, was actually self-pity. It was actually self-pity, you know. Which there is a solution to that, you know. And I'm not going to get into the debate whether somebody's clinically depressed and stuff. One thing I do know is that um, practicing the 12 steps and asking God to remove, and He will. You might have to ask a few times, and you have to be willing to let go, of course. It's self-pity, but He does remove it. When that thing crops up, I ask Him at once because that is. It's one of the most useless emotions. I'm not judging it, but I'm just from my own case because I really can't be of use to anybody. And then eventually it turns into yeah, it's not the way to go for me. But like everything, once you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. But I love what they say here. They say, and under these conditions, I can employ my mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us, I love this, God gave us brains to use, right? A lot of times you see that think sign upside down, but really, hopefully, we're learning how to use our brain. I think I think we never really learned. We reacted to life. We never really did learn to think. Most people would probably die before they actually thought. I heard an expression today, 97% of the people would rather die than think, which is kind of sad, but there is work involved with thinking, believe it or not. But for after all, God gave us brains. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. And then I got the third part, right? I hope I'm not boring you guys, but this thing is really, oh, really? You guys are my people. This is great. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. Okay, so this is another aspect, right? Where we may not be able to determine which course, that's like half the time for me, right? Uh, may not be able to determine which course to take. I ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. I relax and take it easy. Whoa. I'm learning to do that. I'm learning to do that. I don't struggle. And I'm often surprised how the right answers come after we try this for a while. And what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind, right? So, and the other thing, I mean, I spent a good chunk of my life just running away from me, right? So, what a freedom it is where you could be alone with your thoughts. Now, sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable. I'll admit that, even to this day. But that's where the growth is. And not too long, trust me. But it's in that quiet time that I can actually listen, and I might even get some inspiring thoughts. Um, I'm not going to get it out there, that's for sure. I'm not going to get much inspiration out there, you know. But it's nice. It's nice to have that quiet time. I try to make that quiet time in the morning. I try not to look at texts, emails. Now, don't get me wrong. Listen, I fall down that rabbit hole. I'll go down that rabbit hole with YouTube and stuff. It's like once you start seeing, oh, Rolling Stones 60, wow, I can go there, right? Um, but like I said, I like to carve out time in the morning. I need it. I need that time for my soul, for my soul. So, and I do find that it pays off dividends, for my whole day and stuff down that way. So yeah, minute 47 to go. So, and that's the whole 45 minutes, or is that with the 5 minute warning, Derek? Oh, that's the whole
That's
enchilada.
that's the whole enchilada. I thought we
Okay,
interrupt.
okay,
I
we got a ruling
apologize.
there. I got you. Well, anyway, I'll just try to sum up as much as I can with 1 minute 27 seconds. Never praying for our own selfish ends. Yeah, I'm just hitting everything calendars. Thy will, not mine, be done throughout the day. I don't do that too much. I got to work on that one too. So, and then of course we got the 12 step, right? That's Shangri-La, baby. And having had a spiritual awakening, carrying this message. One of the things I've been also blessed to do with 57 seconds to go. I'm now the chair of Queen's Inner Group. Um, so, one of the things that's so important is bringing the message into hospitals and institutions, places where, we are so lucky to be at an AA meeting, sober, we are free, and we have an opportunity to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body called alcoholism. Most alcoholics don't get to this point. So, see, And like I always say, like Texas Hold'em, there's a point where you got to go all in. And you know what? You're going up against alcohol. All I can say is go all in and see what happens, my friends. That's all I got. Thank you. And I think we got 1 second. Yeah.